Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Rock and Roll English, episode number 59. And you may have already noticed there was something a little bit different at the beginning of the show, because there was no American man saying real English, real people, well, that was my best impression of an American accent. That is because this is like a podcast on the go where I don't actually have my computer, so I don't have the necessary files. So I've tried to put everything together to make this podcast, which I've done to an okay standard, but not to my usual high standard, if I may say so myself. Anyway, regular listeners of the show will know that I went to see Dan the Man at the weekend, so I thought I would just record my experience with Dan the Man, speaking to him face to face for only the second time on the podcast, because we usually speak on Skype. I also speak to Mrs. Dan the Man, which is very interesting, and this is quite an off-the-cuff episode. What does that mean? Off the cuff means it is not planned. We just basically started speaking about what we were doing. But these off-the-cuff episodes normally have the most rock and roll vocabulary, which is exactly what happens today. But, as usual with these off-the-cuff episodes, there are a few problems, some with the audio quality. Dan wasn't speaking so loudly, which is typical. He doesn't really understand the very simple things. There was some background noise because Dan lives with some other people. And there was also some tapping noise like this, because I didn't realise this microphone picks up all sound, even if you touch the table. Anyway, as I always say, it's actually good when there are some problems with the quality of the sound, because when you speak English, if you're in a restaurant or in a bar or something like this, often there is a lot of background noise, and often the other person doesn't speak so clearly or so loudly. So it's good exercise for your ears. Anyway, I'm just letting you know that if you want to know. You probably don't. So now you can listen to the podcast. And one more thing, I'm actually sick now, thanks to Dan the Man, and you can find out why. Anyway, remember, all the rock and roll vocabulary is on the website, rockandrollenglish.com. So go there after the episode, do the quiz, and remember the vocabulary. Happy listening. Dan the Man, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I've been here more than 24 hours now. So.
I'm exhausted.
Very good. Exhausted is very tired, actually, if anyone is interested. So just to give all the rockers and rollers, some information of what happened so far. The story's not finished. I had a shit journey here, and then when I arrived, it was pissing down with rain. What does pissing down with rain mean, Dan?
There's a fuckload of rain.
A lot of rain. But the great news is, Dan said to me, don't bring a jacket.
Well, yeah, it hasn't rained here like that for a while.
Dan's like, no, don't bring a jacket. It's fine. So I'm here. I don't have a jacket.
I don't have a jacket.
Yeah, but no one cares about you. It's raining, and then just looking around on the streets, people have winter jackets on, like it was January. I'm looking around, and then there's me and Dan with like a t-shirt walking around, freezing our bollocks off. So that's some rock and roll vocabulary. What does that mean, Dan?
You explain it. You used it.
So your bollocks are your balls. So if you freeze your bollocks off, you're so cold, basically your balls fall off. Mm-hmm. Generally, men say that, obviously. For obvious reasons. Hey, Dan.
Yeah, correct.
So, we went to the football yesterday, didn't we, Dan?
Yeah, it was crap, wasn't it?
Crap is very nice. I think it's only English people say that. No, it means shit. It's not as strong as shit, though. So not only was the match shit, but it was also freezing cold.
And was pissing it down.
That's the dream combination, really. We had a nice, nutritious meal before, though, didn't we?
And you got robbed. Blind.
Yeah, because some French man was trying to rip me off, which means to try and make me pay too much money.
And you were talking to him in Italian.
Well, one of us had to communicate, Dan. He was loving my Italian with a French accent.
He charged €17 for 2 burgers.
And 2 beers.
I
was giving it just a bit, quanto costa questo burger? He didn't understand me, but he enjoyed my enthusiasm. So I think that was the most important thing. But the evening didn't finish there, did it, Dan?
No, it almost did.
We went to, what was it, a Mexican salsa night?
I don't know. I thought it was some sort of political underground.
Yeah, either way, neither Dan or I understood anything. We were standing there, people were shouting a lot of stuff in French.
Someone was in a mask.
Doing some salsa dancing. So, as you can imagine, it wasn't really the type of thing that Dan and I usually... Yeah, exactly. Then we came home, didn't we? Played cards. And then Dan gave me a bed, which... I mean, I say a bed. It was... I think that's describing it too well to call it a bed.
Were you not comfortable?
Well, I've definitely been more comfortable in my life.
What did you expect? What did you want? In your mind, before you came here, what did you think was going to happen? Other than a mattress on the floor with a comfy duvet?
So duvet is like the cover we use. Well, I thought a bed was possible, Dan. I thought a bed was possible. Okay, I'm sorry. And not only that, so the bed sheets, obviously what you sleep on, I said to Dan, are they clean? And Dan said, you have some bed sheets.
But they were clean.
Oh, were they?
Yeah.
Then we woke up this morning, didn't we, Dan? And Dan, he's not so good in the mornings. He's a bit grumpy, which means he's not in the best of moods. And
you've written that one in, haven't you?
I haven't
you
written.
Wrote that.
I haven't.
You wrote that word into your little script you've got in front of you.
This is me showing Dan the piece of paper, and as you can see, it's not there.
Well, I can see you've written he cried on there. So.
Yeah, he cried, which he did do because he said, I don't want to go yoga. I want to stay here. Why do we have to go yoga? But in the end, Mrs. Dan the man and I convinced him. And he had the best time of his life, didn't you, Dan?
Well, I didn't have the best time of my life. And I'm not sure the Mrs. Dan the man actually wanted to go. So.
She wanted to go. It was actually quite funny because the instructor was obviously talking in French and me and Dan couldn't understand anything. So we were trying to look around the room.
He was correcting you a lot though, wasn't he?
Oh, and you know.
Fuck off. You were far worse than me.
I was shit, but you were shit as well. He was correct.
I wasn't quite as shit as you, but...
But that was quite funny, doing the French yoga.
And then you were tapping me on the head.
Yeah, well, I was just touching Dan just for comfort, just to know that he was there. I kept touching him, but he kept ignoring me, which was nice of him. So obviously I have had the pleasure of meeting Mrs. Dan the man, and she's a lovely girl. What she's doing with Dan, I still haven't quite understood. Something must be going on here.
Money is exchanged hands. Not that she's...
What does that mean, Dan?
I take that back.
Hopefully we can have her on here so she can maybe answer the question which everyone is asking themselves. What is a young, beautiful girl doing with an old, miserable bastard like Dan the man?
Yeah. I look forward to hearing her answer.
Well, we all look forward to it. So that will do for now. So maybe speak to you tomorrow, Dan, or probably for the rest of the day, because we're going to be together for the rest of the day.
Unfortunately.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Stop there. So as you can see, even on the first day, Dan and I were already bored of each other. But after that, I did actually speak to Mrs. Dan the man. We had some problems to get Dan out of the room because he didn't trust me, which you can listen to right here. Okay, well, that's fine. It's just not having the pressure of you looking.
If I hear anything that I'm not happy with, I'm going to be coming straight.
A minute ago, you said I'm not going to butt in.
Well, that was when I was in the room. Now I'm not in the room. I might have to enter.
You can say nice.
He's going to do all he can to make me look stupid, okay?
I'm actually not.
I'm going to be completely honest.
I'm actually not.
It's just got nothing to worry about.
Okay.
Where's my phone? Sorry.
Oh, for God's sake. So notice in that I said to Dan, you said you weren't going to butt in. If you butt in, you interrupt someone, which Dan wanted to do. He kept his ear by the door for the entire time that I spoke to to Mrs. Dan the Man. And this is me speaking to Mrs. Dan the Man. So, Mrs. Dan the Man, nice to finally have you on the show.
And thank you for having me. It's actually not my name, though.
Oh, really? It's not Mrs. Dan the Man?
No, it's not.
So, what is your name?
My name is Dea.
See, I did actually know that. That was obviously for the listeners. So, Dea, I know all the rockers and rollers are asking themselves. I'm asking myself, you are a beautiful young girl. What are you doing with an old, miserable bastard like Dan the Man?
Well, it is a huge question.
She asks herself this question every day.
It is difficult to give like a precise answer on that. So, I mean, what are you thinking about?
Well, I'm just thinking about all his negative qualities. I can't find any positive ones. So.
Well, he is actually a very nice guy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because he's not nice to me.
Well, he's pretty nice to me, and he's become more positive.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I've noticed.
Since when?
Well, since he moved to France, actually.
Oh, really? Yeah. Well, I think that is true. We agree on that because, I mean, he's a miserable bastard now, in my opinion. But in the past, I mean, unbelievable. That's because he's like a free spirit now, though, isn't he? Because he does.
I think, yeah.
After our yoga session today.
He was changed.
I would just like Dea here just to back me up. So remember, support my argument about how much Dan was crying about going this morning.
That is completely true. He didn't want to go.
This is the beautiful thing. We had the same thing when Dan the Man's sister was on. She said everything I said was true. Now we've got Dea on and she agrees as well.
Yeah.
Well, I hope he continues to be nice because I just can't see it happening. But, long may it continue, Dan the Man being a nice guy.
I think it will, yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Well, let's keep our fingers crossed, okay? Because if you want to leave him at any time, everybody will understand because, it's obvious.
At the moment, things are going good. So.
Very good. All right. Thanks a lot for coming on, Dea.
Thank you.
High five. So even after speaking to her, I'm still not 100% sure why she is with Dan the Man. But, Dan is a very lucky man. Let's just say that. So this is Dan and me again, giving an update of, I think, after the second day. So here is us talking shit again. So here we are at the end of our weekend together, Sunday night. And I can say I cannot wait to not see Dan's face tomorrow.
I can back that.
Good to know. Just to give you an update of what we did yesterday afternoon, played a game called Piton. Is that the name?
Piton.
Piton. It's a French game. We played one game. Who won, Dan?
You won.
I wasn't sure. And obviously, as everyone knows, Dan and I are rock and roll stars. So we went out for something to eat yesterday. Dan went to bed at 9:34. But we all know I'm the real crazy one. So I went to bed at 10:06. Which was mental, let me tell you. And then today we've been walking around, freezing cold still raining.
I've been quite warm.
Oh yeah, Dan's got a jumper, but remember he told me not to wear a jacket. In fact, he said, let's go to a shop so I can buy some extra clothes. I've got plenty at home, but so we had to go to the shop. The shop was closed. So,
that's not my fault.
Well, I mean, you told me it was a 2-minute walk. It was a 7-minute walk. That already pissed me off, which means made me angry. Yeah. And then
this is why I think our time this weekend has come to an end at a perfect time.
Yeah, I think next time, like 2 days.
2 days.
2 days. 2 days is more than enough. 48 hours, and that should be the cut-off point. Yeah. So no more than that, because you just get bored of each other after that. So yeah, I went to the pub, watched the football, came back, had a pizza. Probably go to bed at the same time as we did yesterday.
If not earlier.
If not earlier. Anyway.
What's been your favourite moment of the weekend? Not moment, so what? Because I know you're going to talk about your victory in some way. If you couldn't mention the game we played yesterday, what's been your favourite moment?
Good question. Probably... I just can't think of anything else except winning that game. It was amazing, wasn't it?
It was okay.
Because what's even better, before we played that game, Dan said to me, nobody's ever beaten me at this game. Like, and then obviously
which was true.
I rock up, which means I arrive and destroyed him. So, what about you? What's been the
beginner's luck?
Sure. What's been the highlight of your trip? You're not your trip. You live here, but of my trip here.
About 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, I think.
The train's at 8:06. Okay, that I leave.
I'll really enjoy those 6 minutes.
Yeah. Anyway,
I'm not waiting at the platform, by the way.
I don't want you to. Anyway, I look forward to speaking to you on Skype. Where there's a clear distance, and when I can just press the red button just to cut you off, to stop talking to you in the future.
Agreed.
Thanks a lot.
See you later.
See you later. And there you have it. Many people ask me if Dan and I actually speak like this to each other, or we just do it for the podcast to, try and make people laugh. I can promise you that we speak to each other like that all the time, which is why after 2 days it becomes very stressful and tiring. Really, that's not actually a joke. In fact, I thought it would be a good idea to ask Mrs. Dan the Man, or Daya, both are fine, how her experience was spending, nearly 3 days with Dan and I. And this is what she said.
Well, it has been extremely exhausting, but also very funny to see both Dan and Martin together. Yeah, but it's kind of having the podcast just non-stop all the time. Hearing them talk to each other, argue, and being extremely competitive. So I'm a little bit tired, yeah. But it has been great fun. And it was really nice to get to know Martin. Yeah, to be honest, I've never experienced anything like this.
So that was Mrs. Dan the Man there saying she has never experienced anything like this in her life. Whether that is a positive or negative thing, I'm not 100% sure. But the most important thing is that she said she had fun. So anyway, let's look at some of that rock and roll vocabulary from today's podcast. I'm sorry if it wasn't more interesting, but Dan and me are not the most interesting people in the world, especially when we are together. I think when we speak on Skype, there is more chemistry. I'm not sure. Anyway, so next week, everything will be back to normal. So, the rock and roll vocabulary. We had I'm exhausted. Many people said that during this, which obviously is very tired. Pissing down with rain is a very common thing to say. Much more common than raining cats and dogs. Nobody really says that anymore. They normally say it's pissing it down, which is obviously not the nicest thing to say, but it's very common. I said I was freezing my bollocks off. I explained that in the show. But again, it's a funny thing to say, actually. So if you're with your friends and you are a man, that's generally what people say. Had the word crap when Dan said the football was crap, which remember is just a little bit less bad than shit, but neither are good. It means not good, obviously. We had someone trying to rip me off, which was the French man selling us the burger. So he was trying to make us pay more than we needed to. Notice we were buying a burger and Dan in the past said he was a vegetarian and it was his idea to buy a burger. So, great vegetarian there, Dan. We had the word duvet, which is the word we use for like the cover when you're in bed. I think it's a French word. So, that's some more French. I know. Grumpy is another one. So Dan is grumpy in the morning, like he's in a bad mood. It's a very common thing to say. Someone is grumpy in the morning. We had butt in when I said to Dan, I thought you said you weren't going to butt in, which is like disturb someone, especially when they're talking. Well, interrupt, actually. If you interrupt someone when they are talking, you can say, don't butt in, like don't interrupt me. We had back me up when Daya backed me up about the fact Dan cried when I insisted we went to yoga, which means that supported my argument. You had pissed me off, which when Dan made me walk 7 minutes instead of 2, which he had promised, it pissed me off. It made me angry. And we also had Rock Up when I said Dan had never lost at this game. Then I rocked up. So then I arrived and I beat him. Obviously a very informal way to speak. Anyway, I am actually sick because I was so cold in France. So I'm going to stop talking now and hopefully get better soon. And speak to you all on Monday, where we will go back to the normal traditional podcast of me and Dan talking about shit. Anyway, thanks a lot for listening and just keep on rocking, baby.